Hello and welcome to another D&D Stories. I am your host, T the Writer. This is a show where I sit here and regale you with all the tabletop gaming stories and remember when something cool happened. So we return once more to the campaign Horrors of Highseat, and we're following Miles and the rest of the gang in this harem anime-inspired Lovecraftian story. And we've just assassinated the ambassador. We have assassinated the mailman. We've taken out cultists left and right. They're gonna start noticing us sooner or later. But one of the things that popped up in all the correspondence that Miles acquired from all the various cultists is they're getting ready to get together and have a big meeting to talk with their master. Now, they don't have the ambassador to act as their mouthpiece anymore, but they don't necessarily all know that. So in a few weeks' time, there's going to be a big get-together. Now, what are we going to do about this? We already know that some of the city guard is in on it. Some of the royal family is in on it. And we don't know quite how deeply all the tendrils of the five-star flesh hand how deeply they are in this group of people or that group of people, so it's hard to find allies when you don't know who to trust. On the other hand, though, a few weeks' time does give some time to prepare, to try and gather allies, and maybe make this into a final stand sort of situation, because if whoever this Dark Master is, the name that all children know and no adult dares speak, he's gonna be there. So we have a target. But in order to take on someone who is at the head of this masterful cult that's summoning Cthulhu monsters and all the rest like that, who needs a chaos beast to talk for him, it's time to start gearing up because the end is in sight. So Miles, if you recall, took out a pirate lord, and what did that pirate lord have on him? Why, a treasure map, of course. So it's time to have a treasure hunt. So Miles returns with Jocelyn and Annabelle back to the hideout under his old house, and the guards never did find the place, so they've settled in well enough. Madeline's got everything up and running the way it should be, and they decide that in order to prep for this meeting, they're going to need some more magic items, some more magic gear, etc., etc., and they're going to need the cash for that. So they're swerving pretty hard on the idea that this pirate lord's treasure map is going to lead them to a big chunk of change that they'll be able to use to buy and equip themselves for the battle to come. So they unroll the treasure map up onto the main dining hall table. They sit down. They compare it to charts of the region and stuff like that. It's south and inland of Highseat, because Highseat is a couple of 100 miles west of the coastline. So, the kingdom sits in kind of a boxy location. There's a mountain range to the west, an ocean to the east, a desert to the south, and more mountains to the north. So it's me building the reserve. It's a rectangle-shaped country. But if they go south and inland, they will end up at this mysterious cobblestone town that's kind of separatist from the rest of the region called Dewhurst. Now, Dewhurst, if you remember, was where the one of our other campaigns took place and eventually came out as 12 Trees. So it's the same Dewhurst that sits on the edge of the 12 Trees forest. So Miles decides that he can't take everybody with him because he wants to kind of keep an eye on Highseat itself, because if the cult starts moving around while he's gone, he's going to be in the dark when they get back. So, Madeline has no levels in any kind of class, so she can't be the person. He needs to take one one party member with him and leave one party member behind. So is he going to take Jocelyn or is he going to take Annabelle? And he deliberates for a while, and he decides that Jocelyn could probably do the most reconnaissance around Highseat on her own, if only because she's human. Whereas if Annabelle gets spotted in a few too many places, why, she's a cat girl. She's a black James Bond. You would say, there he is. You spot him in a crowd because there's nobody else like them in this city. So he decides he's going to take Annabelle with him on this treasure hunt, and Jocelyn is going to be wandering around listening in at taverns and keeping up on the local gossip while they're away. So he does everything you might expect. They have dinner together. They try and figure out exactly where this treasure is buried because it's a regional map. So of course it's got riddles and questions and coordinates on the back, or not on the back, but to the side, because it shows the entire region. So it's where this rock points west under a tree where the dead man hangs high next to a cave that's mouth is shaped like a whale's, follow the river north, etc., etc., and then the X is in a general area. So they're going to have to solve all these little bits and bobs in order to find a precise location. So they hum and haw over this map for a while, and Miles gets some of his books down from all his regional mapping and history and things like that to find out what he can about this Dewhurst place. And Dewhurst, it seems, was a town that was started by druids, which is unusual, but they put it up right up against this place called the 12 Trees Forest, which is well known for its giant white marble statuary and art installations. So you can sign up on a tour and see all these ancient statuaries that still stick out of the ground at odd angles and things like that. It's got a very strange history, especially around a group of druids that called themselves the 12 Trees. Now, details on them are rather spotty and lost to the edges of time, wink wink, but the town itself is fairly prosperous. Apparently it's a cobblestone place. It has its own flower festival, this fertility festival that brings in a lot of revenue. The road doesn't end there, it goes on through, so it's a bit of a crossroads when it goes all the way up through the region and towards the mountains. So traffic does go through Dewhurst, and it does host a massive festival once a year that lasts for 2 weeks. So it's a prosperous place, and it does gain a lot of bounty and wealth from the forest that it's up against, meat and wood and ore and things like that. It's mostly wood, mostly farmland, but it is a well-established place. So Miles decides, okay, he's gonna get some horses. He's gonna set Annabelle on a horse, and they're just gonna go. They've got a couple of weeks before this culty meeting starts, and they need to get there, find the treasure, get back, do their shopping, be ready by the time this meeting comes up. So they're on a time limit. Let's go. So sticking to the roads, they head south and inland all the way to Dewhurst. And Dewhurst is just how we, the listeners, remember it, because it's the exact same town, it's the exact same place that the 12 Trees campaign took place in. Now, while they are on their way there, they pass through a couple of smaller towns, mostly little clusters of buildings. They ask about Dewhurst, see if there's any local lore that they can learn about, and they keep hearing about this same individual, a paladin of the old ways known as Ludwig, or Ludwig the Green. He is what did they call him? The Kieran's champion, because apparently a long time ago Ludwig and his companions, who were moving into Dewhurst at some point, stumbled across and freed a lesser air god that took up residence in the 12 Trees Forest, and he became sort of its ambassador, its I guess mouthpiece, now that I think about it. Much like the ambassador is with whatever it is that's going to show up at this culty meeting, Ludwig is kind of the good version of that. If the Kirin has something to say or has some qualm with the people in town, it will tell Ludwig and he'll go shake a finger at them, or he'll go and tell them what boon is coming or what the weather might be like. He's probably gained a few levels in Druid since the campaign when he was a player, but he's middle to late age by now. He's getting a little old for his armor, but he's still out there in the green with his big antler helmet and his his sword of bladed light that comes out of his ring, because it's not a lightsaber and all that. But they hear quite a bit about this guy and kind of learn that he's basically the lord of the forest. And if they're gonna go digging somewhere and they don't run into a Kirin, they might run into Ludwig. So it's probably a good idea to go and meet with him and kind of let him know what's going on, so that the denizens of the wood, not Dewhurst, but the denizens of the wood, don't pick them apart, or impale them instantly, or strike them with lightning or something. Miles feels like he needs to be on the up and up, because if there's a legendary druid paladin out there, and a physical manifestation of a god is running around in this forest, he feels like that sneaking around isn't going to do him any good. So he starts coming up with a diplomatic plan while he and Annabelle are traveling there. And they make it by the end of 3, 4, 5 days. If you stick to the road and you've got horses, you can make pretty good time around here. So they arrive in Dewhurst, and no, it's not the middle of the flower festival. That would have been too convenient. But they are greeted by a lot of half-elven people, a lot of human swords, a few dwarves, a couple of elves, things like that. It's a mostly human town, but they're very one with nature. There's flower designs and vines and things. It's a little hippie-like, but they've got clean cobblestone streets and horses, and children can make a gold piece if they run around pulling weeds out of the road and put it in a bucket and take it to the local guardhouse. And I pulled these weeds out of the road. Okay, here's a gold piece for keeping the town, ship shape, that kind of place. So it's a very welcoming place with green tile rooftops and big windows and white siding, and it's very cabin in the woods pleasant. Lots of birds and dogs that run around, and children playing in the street, that kind of place. And there arrives Miles, the assassin rogue, and Annabelle, the cat girl, formerly a slave who's torn people's heads off, basically, since we've met her, arriving in this pleasant druid town. Because if you remember, Dewhurst is none the wiser about what the 12 Trees cult did, and if you've seen those episodes of D&D stories, you remember, a lot of shady shit was going on, but in the end, our heroes decided that it was going to stay hidden in the sands of time, because these innocent people don't need to know about the gruesome history of what happened in those woods. So, if you need a reminder, go watch the episodes of D&D stories, the 12 Trees campaign. It should be somewhere in the 80s or 90s as far as the episode numbers go. But they arrive in this town. Looks like a pretty great place. They start asking around for Ludwig 12 Trees. And of course everybody knows Ludwig. He built a shrine to the Kirin and was basically declared and again, I guess the best word is ambassador. The ambassador to the Kirin that lives in the woods. So, eventually the word got out that Redhorn, the black unicorn that was murdering people, was slain by Ludwig and his followers, so he was declared a local hero. He's, the speaker for a god. He's got to be here somewhere, and everybody knows his name, but where is he now? So they check in to like a local inn and tavern. They do all the regular stuff. They eat. Miles asks around for the local job board, etc., etc., all the things you kind of do in an RPG when you arrive in a new town. And he greases enough palms to get some gossip going and finds out that Ludwig and a couple of his family members live out in this big manor, 12 Trees Manor, out on the edge of town. There's this big herb garden and there's big stable, etc., etc., on its own big plot of land. It's got a greenhouse made of glass. And, in this era, in the medieval times, having a building made of glass is a big deal, so it's very fancy. And they go to meet with Ludwig, and he's a pleasant enough guy. His armor is kind of rusty. He's got some moss growing on his shoulder. Again, he's still got the big antler helmet. And, again, he's kind of getting up there in the years to be wearing this much armor. But he's still got the wish ring around his necklace, which he may or may not have spent on retaining his youthly strength, if you know what I mean. So Miles kind of tells it to him straight once they get to like a private tea room or something like that, and he sits down and he listens to what Miles has to say. It's like, hey, I know these are your woods and they're Dewhurst's woods, but a pirate lord has been slain, and a bunch of his slaves have been set free. And they were going to be sacrificed for da-da-da rituals to summon sarlaccs and ambassador monsters and things like that. But he left a good chunk of change somewhere in the 12 Trees forest. Can I go digging for it and not get killed by the Kirin? And Ludwig, of course, kind of strokes his beard. He's got like a salt and pepper beard going on. And he says, all right, well, I will allow this, but I will come with you, just so I know there's no funny stuff. And Ludwig knows that there are plenty of hidden dungeons, hidden locations, secret bases, and prisons and things hidden all over the 12 Trees forest, and God knows where this treasure is actually located. It might say it's in a cave somewhere, but that cave might actually be another fallback spot for the 12 Trees cult, and he just never came across it, because the 12 Trees forest is pretty big, so there's plenty of room for all kinds of hidden stuff that even he has never seen. So he's suspicious of Miles coming and saying, hey, there's a treasure buried somewhere, but he's got a treasure map. And he openly admits to murdering this pirate lord and freeing his slaves and stuff like that. So Miles promises him 10%, which honestly isn't really a big deal because Ludwig is of the nature persuasion, so money wasn't a big deal to him when he was digging up his family's past. So he promises him some stuff, and says, you can do whatever you want with that, but, I brought the treasure map, and we want to find this and, not get killed by a Kirin. Can you guide me to this location? And he shows him the map. He says, all right, for 10%, which will probably go to, like, a local orphanage or something like that, he tells him offhandedly, we'll find this treasure of yours and see what we can get. So they journey out into the 12 Trees woods, and all the while I'm rolling on my little chart, do they actually run into the Kirin? Like, is it in a physical form that they can run across right now? Because that would probably not be a good thing, wandering around in its forest with shovels and picks, saying they're going to dig a big hole somewhere. It might not like that. But no, it must be off doing other stuff, or hanging out in the clouds, or whatever it is Kirins do for leisure, because Ludwig does not sense its presence anywhere. They stop at the Kirin shrine. They make an offering. They pour some water over like a silver statue and put berries in front of it, and like to make like a respectful offering of we're crossing the land, that kind of thing. And they're acknowledging the power of the creature that resides within. So after doing that, Miles and Annabelle and Ludwig go deep into the green depths of the wood. Now, of course, it wouldn't be D&D if you didn't run into at least a little bit of trouble when you come into an area. And I've got my little chart, and of course, it's numbered 1 to 100 things that can happen. Anywhere from, like, heavy rain, or a pack of wolves, or, number 1 says Kirin. So if you roll a 1, the Kirin will come down and be pissed off. But, of course, they don't roll a 1 out of 100. And among just like all the things, there was like pleasant weather, or you twist your ankle on a rock formation and your travel time is double. Just all kinds of stuff of what can happen when you go into an area that's not specifically mapped. It's basically like traveling but without a road. So yeah, so I go, okay, Miles, make me a fate check, and the fate check is a D100. It's a percentile. So he picks up the 2 D10s and he rolls it, and he gets like a 9. And I go, a 9 out of 100, and I look at my chart, and they're not arranged by low numbers or bad, high numbers or good. It's just arranged in a list of 100 things. And I look at 9, and it says velociraptors. And I was like, when did I put that in? So coming in out of the tree line, not dire wolves, not black unicorns, velociraptors, because of course. So of course Annabelle jumps up a tree using all of her claws, and Ludwig pulls his sword with one hand and has the ring of bladed light on the other hand, so he like pulls his lightsaber and he's like, defend yourself. And Miles is like, dinosaurs! And they're just as smart as wolves. They are pack hunters, so they get flanked. There's like 8 of these fuckers. And Ludwig and Miles go back to back. Miles has the acid +2 dagger in one hand, and he's got like an alchemy bomb in the other hand. He bought a bunch, or not an alchemy bomb, alchemist fire in the other hand. And this fight breaks out, and eventually Annabelle leaps down from the tree to try and like gouge the eyes out of one of them, but this is a close fight just by sheer numbers. And I am once again, as a DM, taught the value of the action economy, which is when there are superior numbers, it doesn't matter how much weaker or stronger one side is over the other, because if you get 6 actions on your side and the other side gets 16, it's gonna suck to be you. Which is actually how, in D&D, how dragons are killed so easily a lot of the time, is the DMs forget that, if it's a group of 4 party members, they get 8 actions every turn, and the dragon gets 2, and they wonder why the dragon dies so easily. It's like, well, he needs minions. He needs, baby dragons. He needs, kobolds that serve as fodder for the battle while he's spraying lightning over the rest. Anyway, the action economy was not in their favor, but this was, of course, where Miles gets to shine with his feint attacks, his acid damage, and using Annabelle as a partner to flank with, because Ludwig is a paladin in all technicality, like in his character notes and stuff. Paladins cannot use flanking. Or can they? No. What am I thinking of? Knights? I forget. It put it in the comments below. I forget. There is a class that's like behaviorally based that they can't flank because it's like dishonorable or something like that. It might not be paladins. I might be remembering something funny, but at the time I played it to where Ludwig would not help Miles flank So he had to use Annabelle as a flanking partner to get that extra +2, or to get that extra -2, or whatever it is. But they fight, and they fight, and they fight, and they take out about half of these things before the other half starts to realize that the price for their dinner is getting a little too high. So they take off into the foliage and leave their 3 or 4 comrades behind, dead on the ground. And Miles is kind of standing there with an empty bandolier of what used to be alchemist fire and a couple of holy waters. His acid dagger is dripping with gore from these fucking dinosaurs, and he's starting to realize this is, the 12 Trees forest is probably much older and much less disturbed by the common man than he thought, because if there are still dinosaurs running around, there may be some forgotten corners of the world yet that man has yet to explore, at least outside of the druid community that took up residence here. So, and he does. He asks Ludwig about the group of druids called 12 Trees, but he does not roll high enough on his diplomacy. So Ludwig, and if you remember, Ludwig is the descendant of the 12 Trees cult, or one of them, and is not willing to share his family legacy with this stranger, as black and bloody as it happens to be. So Ludwig is pretty tight-lipped, but tells him to stay on his toes, because if velociraptors are running around, at this hour, he says it like, I hate to make this comparison. If you've ever seen, like, the old Ultima games where somebody would say, "Where can I find a duck?" And your answer is, "At this hour?" It's like, where can, there's velociraptors out. At this hour? Really? That's how Ludwig treats it, because he's been there long enough and served the Kirin long enough that no exotic wildlife is going to surprise him. But Miles is on edge, because if dinosaurs are a thing, God knows what else is going to come boiling out of the freaking foliage to eat his face. And he's like, okay, let's pull the map, and Annabelle, watch for Tyrannosauruses. And of course Annabelle's like, what's a Tyrannosaurus? You'll know it when you see it, honey. Just keep an eye out. And he kind of pulls the map up really slowly. And he and Ludwig exchange notes, and they point at things, and they go to some funny shaped rocks that looks like a finger pointing in one direction, and they find a cave that looks like a whale's mouth, and they follow a river for X number of miles, and they find a big pond that feeds a good portion of the river off to one side, that has weeping willows leaning over it like 3 sisters huddled around a campfire, and they follow all the poetry and numbers and things that goes with it, until finally it looks like they found the right spot, where there are 3 boulders stacked on top of each other. Now, those of you that go camping a lot, or were in Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, if you know your trail signs, finding 3 stones stacked on top of each other, like a big stone, a medium stone, and a little stone, that's usually held down as a sign for danger. Like, there's no painting, there's no letters, it's just like people that know the woods. It's like, if there's something dangerous nearby, they'll stack 3 stones, and that doesn't occur naturally, but it doesn't look super out of place if you don't know where to look. So a druid, a ranger, a Boy Scout, a Girl Scout, whatever it happens to be, somebody with a lot of ranks in tracking or survival would notice something like that and say, oh, there's something dangerous nearby. And according to the map and all the little hints written onto one side, the treasure is directly beneath those 3 rocks. So they have to, the Ludwig and Miles go up, and they push the littlest stone off to one side. It comes up to like their waist, so they have to make a strength check, and then they climb down, and Annabelle joins in for the medium rock. So I think it's like for every extra person that's pushing on something, you get like a +2 or a +4. So the three of them combined with their strength shove this giant boulder to one side and off of the biggest one. And then they look at the biggest one and they're all three standing on it. They're like, okay, how are we going to move this? And Miles is like, don't worry, I've got you covered. So he pulls out his acid dagger +2, which is made with the fang of a black dragon, and he starts like carving a groove into it. The acid eats away at the stone. He keeps carving this groove as hard as he can. And he's like, okay. And then he stands there with the dagger kind of dripping over it for a while. He's like, all right, we're gonna, he starts like pawing through all of his stuff. He's got like flash powder, alchemist fire, things that will burn or, you know, make small explosions. He's basically gonna try and like split this boulder in half. It probably took like 8 guys to put this boulder here, so the 3 of them are not gonna fucking move this thing anytime soon. So he's gonna try and break it in half. So he carefully unscrews the cork of a couple of alchemist fire. He pours it in there. He makes a little line, like if you've seen an old cartoon where they like line the gunpowder out of the mine and then they light it with a match and it burns the gunpowder in a line all the way to the dynamite. It's kind of like that. So, and I don't know if alchemist fire could like make an explosion big enough to break a stone that size or whatever. I don't know the hardness versus the damage versus all that crap. He was being clever, so I gave it to him. And he lays down like this little pile of alchemist fire from his emergency stash. And he gets the flash powder and the flash paper that he would use for like his rogue stuff. And he makes this long line, and they get the flint and steel and they light it. And they go and they hide behind some other boulders and they put their hands over their ears. Boom! And it's just enough to break this stone so that Ludwig, Annabelle, and Miles, with their power combined, can pull 1/2 of this thing to one side very slowly but very surely, revealing a dug out like shape in the stone below. It's not dirt under there, it's actually rocks. So somebody came out here with a stone pick and chisel to make this secret hiding spot. And inside that hole, you know, it's barely 3 feet deep, but it's big enough for a treasure chest. And Miles is like, yes! There it is! We came all this way, we did all this crap, there are fucking dinosaurs, but here we are, yeah! And he hops down onto it, and he checks it for traps, because he's a rogue. And it's got like a dinky padlock on it, but he's got a dagger that weeps acid, so of course he just kind of dribbles some acid on it and pops the padlock. And he throws it open, and inside he finds 113,000 gold pieces and a diamond the size of his fist. And of course, you get the same sound you always get when somebody who loves money in D&D finds a lot of money. So he's running his arms down through it. This is like a big like double chest from Minecraft or something. It's ginormous. So he's like running his arms through it. He's throwing gold pieces in the air. He's got the fist-sized diamond. He tosses it to Annabelle and she tosses it back. And they toss it to Ludwig. He tosses it back. They're throwing money in random directions because it's 113,000 gold pieces, this pirate treasure. And they found it. They found the treasure. They went through this forest. They fought dinosaurs. They blew up rocks. They earned it. But of course, Miles has his bag of holding, so he starts like scooping gold pieces in, and he tries to appraise the diamond. Now, whenever you get like obnoxiously large gems, you get obnoxiously large prices. So the diamond economy in medieval times is not the same as it is now, but like it's worth quite a bit. It's on par with like the Devil's Eye. It's just like it's an obnoxiously large gem that who's gonna have enough money to buy it from you? That kind of finery. You know, you would put this in the crown of a queen, or on the finger of a necromancer, or like something obnoxious. Some bizarre enchantment that you would put at like the end of a wizard's staff and something like that. It's like nobody's going to have the money to give you what this is worth, even in like Highseat. And he looks over at Ludwig and goes, "Ludwig, do you want this?" And Ludwig, who again places very little value in money, is like, "All right, fine. This will be my 10% and you can keep the gold pieces. However, comma space, I will be selling it and giving the funds to an orphanage in Highseat. So I will send the monies ahead. Why don't you check on that when you get back to the city? I'll send a messenger ahead of you." And Miles is like, "All right, well, how are you going to get that gigantic gemstone all the way to Highseat?" He goes, "The same way you would send like a royal Fabergé egg, just like wrap it up and send it in the mail as normal, and nobody's gonna know what's in my package, so why would they treat it any differently? Just don't let anybody see it while I'm wrapping it." So they put it in like a burlap sack, and then they tie up the sack, and then they stick it in like a rucksack somewhere so nobody in town will see it. But he's just gonna send it off to help some children in Highseat or something like that. So he's perfectly fine with this adventure. He's not as much of a money-driven character as you might expect some D&D players like myself to be. What happened next? So that having been said, Miles decides to kind of let Ludwig in on what is happening in Highseat. Now, Ludwig has some experience with higher forces, with bloody family legacies, etc., but not really of the Lovecraftian sense. So while they're traveling on foot back to Dewhurst, Miles kind of fills him in on exactly what the nature of all of everything that's going on, all the cultists and the corrupt city guards, and all the rest that's going on. And he says, it sounds like this is coming to a head if these cultists are having a meeting with their darker master coming up soon. I would lend you my blade if you would have it. I am no longer in my prime, but I am charged by the powers of the 12 Trees Forest and the Kirin that resides within. And he kind of, lifts his wish ring that he keeps on his necklace, on his person, and goes, "I may be beyond my prime, but I can still do quite a bit of good." And he's already shown that he can fight dinosaurs, and he has the equivalent of a lightsaber in a ring. So Miles can tell he's seen a battle or two. Perhaps he would make for a good party member. And Miles is like, "I could use all the help I can get to fight these guys and whatever it is that they're going to be having a meeting with coming soon. So, yes, absolutely." So, Ludwig joins the party. Da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na. Would you like to give a nickname to Ludwig? Shut up. Ludwig has been transferred to Box 2. God damn it, Tony. You're gonna do that joke every time somebody joins the party? Yes, I am. Shut up. Anyway, so Ludwig leaves Miles at one of the inn and taverns with Annabelle and says that he'll gather some supplies and meet them in the morning. And he does. He says goodbye to his family members, who I did not have character sheets for from the 12 Trees campaign. So Ludwig joins Miles and Annabelle on their journey back to Highseat with their riches in tow, with their diamond in tow. He decided he was going to keep it on him since he was going anyway. And they make their way all the way back to Highseat. unharassed by bandits or bad weather or anything like that. So nothing important happens on the way back. Now, they make it all the way back to Highseat, and they decide that they're going to go take care of this orphanage stuff first. So they go to like the first bank of Highseat, or whatever you want to call it, and they sell this obnoxiously large diamond for, like 19,000 gold pieces, and Ludwig puts it all in a big sack, and they're going to go take it to this orphanage. Now, the orphanage of Highseat is not entirely unexpected, because, there's a lot of lords and ladies, there's a lot of slaves, there's a lot of whores, there's cracks in this society where children end up like falling through because their parentage is either unnoble or not able to care for them or don't want them, etc., etc. So this orphanage is a fairly fancy place. It's a 2 or 3 story stone building with good beds and good food, and a patron and a matron that genuinely care for these kids. They're not the cruel sort that you see in like Skyrim, where they don't actually care for these kids and they hate their lot in life. No, they actually try to actively get these kids adopted or to bring them up with job skills, etc., etc. And Miles looks over at Ludwig and is like, Ludwig, how do you know about this place? It's like, all big cities like this that deal in all these different trades, that are close to the ocean, etc., etc., have places like this for the unfortunate children of the world. And he's like, all right, well, and they go in to meet with the matron and patron to hand off this money and to just be like anonymous donators, and Miles is kind of letting Ludwig do the talking, because it's not what he would have done with the 19,000 gold. But while he's kind of like standing outside the proverbial like principal's office, he notices that all the kids, this place is well off enough that the kids have art supplies, and there are like pictures and paintings and artwork that's like fastened to the walls up and down the hallways of this place. What makes you happy? What's your favorite part of the day? What's scary for you? What do you, to help these children express themselves in healthy ways. And Miles gives pause over the area, what is scary to you, because he sees something familiar. And that familiar thing is a little figure in a top hat with scary crisscrossing teeth. Now, where has he seen that before? If you recall, the princess of Highseat gave him a black scroll that had pictographs and hints and names on it for him to kind of start his breadcrumb journey. And among those things was a figure in a top hat, lording over other stick figures that were running from him in like if you know what hierarchic scaling is, it's like when something is more important, it's drawn bigger. That figure in the top hat was drawn much bigger than all the other stick figures. And of course, children have limited art skills, so it is again portrayed as something with big red eyes, with a cape, with giant clawed hands, with and all of them have a top hat. All of them have big, empty red eyes with big gnashing teeth. And all these children are drawing the same thing. Like, there's one of a kid running away from it while it's leaning out of the closet. There's one with a kid that's like cowering in his bed while it's like upside down on the ceiling. There's another one where it's peeking out from under the bed. There's another one where it's like standing out in the hallway. There's another one where it's like whatever this thing is, like pulling a kid, like a stick figure kid's head off his shoulders, and there's lots of red paint to represent blood and stuff. That's like, what makes you afraid? And all of these children are drawing the same thing. And this gets Miles's attention because he's seen this figure before in the black scroll case that the princess gave him. So of course he immediately goes to try and interview some of these kids while the matron and patron are distracted with Ludwig. And he goes, I've seen this before. And he, it's how do you diplomacy a child? You really don't. You just try to act nice, I guess. And I have no idea how to portray children because I don't have a lot of children in my life, so I just played them like regular people. But not that they're not. That's a weird way to say that. You know what I mean. The childlike mindset is hard for me to portray as a GM, but he goes to talk to these children who treat this nightmarish figure like a real person, like they've physically seen him before, whether they're asleep or awake. And one of the children even went missing a few months ago because, whatever this thing was took him away. And he starts to kind of put this together, talking with 5, 6, 7 kids in all these different places, in the kitchen, on the playground, in the halls, in their like little kids' library, stuff like that. It's exactly what you think it is, and you the listener, you think you don't know it, but you do. It's the name that every kid knows and no adult speaks because the adults don't believe it. It's a boogeyman. So the entire 5-star flesh hand, all this culty shit, the ambassador, this Lovecraftian garbage that's snaked its way into the infrastructure of Highseat is all based around a boogeyman. Now, if you don't know your bestiaries, a boogeyman is technically a fae or like an outside sort of creature that comes from the fairy realm, but being that this is a Lovecraftian story, we treated him like an outsider, an extra-dimensional being that feeds on the fears of others. And they come with a fear aura, like a dragon. They come with they can taste and feed off the fears, like literally feed off your fears. They're surrounded by a smoky haze that will take the shape of whatever you're afraid of, and until you break its fear aura, it will draw strength from you. Like, it recovers HP over time so long as you're afraid of it. So of course it hangs out around children. So of course it hangs out around slaves, around cowards, around people who are downtrodden in life and lack the sheer willpower to stand up to it, which is why they're using virgin sacrifices, why they're using slaves who do not have like the strong willpower to stand up to greater things than themselves. That's why it hangs around children who are still afraid of monsters that lurk under the bed or in the closet. It's gathering strength from all these people because it's a boogeyman. Now, having given a name to his ultimate nemesis, Miles is, of course, as pale as a sheet, because if you literally have to face, like, a bedtime story, the boogeyman will come to get you, the boogeyman will take you away, the boogeyman will eat you, the boogeyman will take the shape of whatever you're afraid of to get you in the dead of night. How do you fight that? You don't. It's a story. It's a shapeless thing. It's like a boggart from Harry Potter. It's this shapeless thing that you have. There is no strategy. You can't. The answer is you lose. So Miles now realizes that within the next week or two, a boogeyman will be made manifest at this location where all of these cultists are going to come together to listen to what he has to say without the aid of the ambassador to keep them all from going mad. So he's literally going to flip a switch, turn into whatever they're afraid of, and probably consume them before, like, manifesting into a greater form. So Miles kind of puts this together rather quickly, that if the cultists don't have an ambassador to speak for the boogeyman, he's going to be in the room with them. And, his fear aura activates. He becomes whatever they're afraid of. He sucks the life out of them, grows exponentially more powerful, and then just fucking goes on a rampage because he doesn't know how many cultists are going to be there. All the cultists from the city guard, is the king going to be there? They're having this great big meeting because their dark master is arriving, and they don't have they don't have an ambassador to serve as like a mouthpiece or like a barrier or like a middleman or whatever you want. So when he gets there, they're all gonna die, and he's going to absorb all of their life essence and become this unstoppable black fog that will consume all of Highseat, and it's gonna be over. Like, the Lovecraftian ending is well on its way. And that is where we will stop for today. It looks like the ultimate evil has reared its ugly head, but is there anything that Miles can fucking do about it? Not likely. So I guess next time we will come to the conclusion of the horrors of Highseat. It's a rogue, a tavern wench, a paladin, a fighter, and a monk against the boogeyman. Good luck, heroes! So, that is where we will stop for today. So I hope you guys enjoyed that story, and I will see you guys on the next D&D Stories. Keep gaming.
Thanks for listening. Hit that like button for me. If you'd like to hear more stories by me, please check out my audio novels here on YouTube. They're available for free. Cyranox the Feared is swords and sorcery, and Shield Maiden is all about superheroes. Check them out for me, and if you're feeling extra generous, I do have a Patreon as well. Links in the description below. Keep gaming.